a conductive wire, and you were so electric. I had no say when you came so near, and just passed right through me.
Hey everyone, welcome to Geekdom is Back. I'm your host, Deanna Chapman, and today I am joined by Jacob Tender and Mike Comite for episode 300, possibly the last episode ever of the podcast, to be determined, but it's the last episode for now, that's for sure. Jake, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me back.
Of course. Mike, how about you?
Doing wonderful. And was our last episode together the 200th episode?
250.
250. I couldn't remember. I know it was a benchmark. It was a landmark.
Yeah.
It was a little over a year ago, I think. Like it was around, I remember it being around this time.
Yeah, I took quite a bit of time off when I moved this summer, so...
Yet you still managed to make 50 episodes of a podcast in between then and now, which is more than Jacob and I have ever done of any podcast.
That's so true.
Yeah, I don't know. I took like 6 weeks off. I don't know how that happened. That math doesn't really work, but...
Yeah, so you made the big move since we talked on the show last. How are you adjusting?
It's been a process, but I think I'm finally getting there.
I've been watching your progress settling in the apartment, and it looks nice.
Yeah, that has been probably the biggest process, because like I had my desk set up in the dining room, which was hardwood floor and right next to the kitchen. And the refrigerator kept making so much noise that I just felt like I was never going to be able to record in there. So after getting everything all set up in there, I moved it all into the living room.
A lot softer, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, there's carpet in the living room. So even though it's like a bigger room, there's at least like a wall between the living room and the fridge. So I was like, all right, it seems to be okay. And I mean, because of the microphone I use, it doesn't pick up a ton of extra noise. So like if people go by in the hallway, it typically won't pick it up. But for videos, it's been a bit of a problem because I use a different microphone. So it's been fun figuring that out.
What kind of microphone are you using for video?
I have the Rode NTG3B.
Is that a shotgun?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nicer because it's just easier and out of the way for video. It's been a whole ordeal, and I have made very few videos since I have been here because of it. But today, we're talking about aliens. We previously talked about alien, singular. Now we got plural.
Was that on that episode, or was that just Jake?
Yeah. No, that was both of us.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I guess... Wow.
Despite Mike's memory, it was a good episode, I thought.
I can't remember it. I'm sorry. I think of all the Marvel episodes that I've done with you guys and the Star Wars one, but I didn't remember talking about aliens. Probably because it's been so long since I've watched Alien. It was like pre-pandemic, I guess, which is, I guess, only a couple of years. But still, I feel like I would have watched it more recently than that.
Yeah, I rewatched all of them during the pandemic.
Okay.
A buddy of mine had never seen them, so I think they were all streaming on HBO at the time. So we just kind of went through the quadrilogy. They even got me to rewatch Resurrection, which was fun. I mean, I hadn't seen it for probably 10 years prior to that, so that was interesting. But this is your first time seeing Aliens, right, Deanna?
Yeah, so what I did was,
Crazy.
When we had decided to do Alien, I had already watched the movie for the first time, and then I did a second watch, and I think I did the director's cut or whatever for the podcast. So with this, I just went ahead and watched the extended cut because I was like, I'd rather watch too much than not enough. So I know there's quite a few people who prefer the theatrical. It might be most people, actually. I'm not 100% sure, but I was like, I'll just watch the extended cut to be safe. So I did that earlier in the week. And I had a friend, my friend Nick was like, now you got to watch the rest so you can become a Prometheus defender with me.
Oh, I saw that comment on your letterbox. Yeah, that was funny. Yeah, I hope you do. We watched Aliens the same night. Mike, I think, watched it a couple nights before, and he also watched the extended cut. And I have a feeling we're going to talk about this a lot because I watched the theatrical cut for the first time in probably like 10 years.
Okay.
I generally watch the extended cut of this movie, but I figured since you guys were watching the other one, I may as well try to differ my experience in some way.
I'm glad that you did that because I would love to contrast and compare the viewing experiences because I've done both at this point now. We'll get into it, I'm sure, which we prefer and stuff.
Yeah, and going into this, I didn't read up about it or anything. I didn't even realize until a few minutes before we hopped on this call that it took 7 years to get this made.
The movie?
Well, just the release dates between movies was 7 years, which is
Yeah.
quite a long time for a sequel. It's not quite as long as, waiting for Stephen King to write Dr. Sleep or something. But it was shocking to me because I was under the impression that everyone loved Alien when it first came out and that a sequel was sort of just a given. But apparently there were some lawsuits and Fox didn't want to do a sequel, which is wild.
What were the lawsuits over?
That's a good question.
Jake, tell me.
I actually don't know.
Jake, you're the alien expert. You have to
know.
tell me. You can't just
No,
bring up
I'm-
lawsuits
I'm-
on a podcast and not talk about what they were about.
I know more about Alien than I do Aliens. I haven't gotten into that Rinsler book yet. But that is interesting. But also, is it really that surprising? I mean, this is James Cameron. Like, it takes him forever to make a sequel to anything.
That's true. I mean, they were doing so much with this movie. I'm not surprised took 7 years. I mean, even if they greenlit it like 2 years after the first one because of demand or whatever, lawsuits or whatever, like I can't imagine like the scale of this thing was huge.
Yeah,
Like
it was a
this
lot bigger.
And also this was like the biggest thing in the world when we were kids. Like I think we even missed what year this came out in 87. I was buying Aliens toys, or what my parents were buying them for me, I guess, when in like the early 90s, like 94 still. So that's like, 7 years after the release of this movie, the toys were selling like hotcakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Commercials on Saturday morning cartoons, it was nuts.
We talked about this during the last one too. Alien was great. It was a great movie, but also very artistic, very atmospheric, very creepy and sinister. But this movie is so much different, right? Like it's an action movie and therefore sold tons of figs and comics. Like it exploded the universe in an entirely new way. And at this point, like, do we have Predator at this point? Had Predator come out?
Oh, definitely. Yeah,
must have,
That was
right?
like an 80s thing also, yeah.
Yeah. And so then there was the culmination of those things. So yeah, this movie was very different in a lot of ways, but is, easily credited with the success of the franchise. Like it's only a franchise because this movie was made.
Yeah, and I just quickly looked it up, but it appears that the lawsuit was that the Alien producers were suing Fox over their cut of the movie, and so they could not proceed with the sequel until that was handled.
Their cut of the movie.
Yeah. I mean, there was, there were tons of production woes for the first one. Like it barely got made. Like it's because of the success of Star Wars that it was even given the full green light to go into production.
It's so crazy because it's so different from Star Wars,
Yeah.
Yeah, but they realized like there is a market for sci-fi. Like, oh, we have this script. It takes place almost entirely in the hallways of a ship. I don't think that's going to work. And then you've got, the Death Star. So they figured, yeah, we'll give it a shot. And it worked. It worked out. Obviously, very different film, but
Yeah, I just thought that was super interesting. And Jake, you mentioned the J.W. Rinsler book. I have the Alien one and have yet to make my way through that. I've sort of flipped through it and read some bits and pieces here and there, but it's a massive book. And I imagine the Aliens one is roughly the same size.
yep, almost exactly.
Yeah. So it seems like there's quite a bit of interesting stuff going on behind the scenes just to get both of those movies made. But, you have Sigourney Weaver returning as Ellen Ripley, and you have a lot of great just sort of characters in general in this. Like Bill Paxton as Hudson really stood out to me because
Iconic.
yeah, he just went all in on the character and like that character type. And it felt like the entire cast really did that, especially with everyone in the military outfit. It's like they all just went full on into their roles. And I think that's what makes this work so well as a sequel.
I agree. I think James Cameron is a master at characters. I think he's very, very good at building big personalities. You've got, like, right off the bat, like, when you meet all of the Marines when they wake up from hypersleep, like, it's immediate, right?
Yeah.
Like, dude gets out of cryo and immediately puts a cigar in his mouth. You know exactly what he is all about right away. Look into my eye. I just absolutely love that dude. And then it goes, they go sit down, they're just having breakfast. And then immediately you've got this android who just starts playing the knife game. And it just goes like, you're just learning so much about these people immediately. Hudson, Vasquez, that whole like Vasquez Drake, partnership that's going on, very odd couple sort of thing.
I think it's my favorite part of the movie is their friendship. Just like,
Yeah.
It's just this platonic, like high-fiving, like, you're too bad, Vasquez. Like,
Yeah.
they're just so positive towards each other. They're just so happy. It was just weird. I think the only thing about that relationship, I was like, oh, well, they should have had their moment. I think maybe it's important that we're kind of getting ahead of, I guess, any plot discussion, but like Vasquez having to watch Drake die,
Yeah.
I guess is different from them. Like, she blows up with Hudson, which is like, well, I mean, I kind of wish that Vasquez and Drake had blown up together, but I understand what they were going for,
I think the best moment of those two is when they're like kind of down in the nest, right? And they take all the ammo away from all the Marines because they don't want them to blow the core. But there's that moment of like knowing and trust between Vasquez and Drake where she pulls out these extra cartridges and they, hook back up. I love that. That says everything about those characters. Like they are a team within a team,
Yeah. Oh man, they just have each other's backs so well. And like when they're practicing the gun reloading, like I watched this with Erin, and she was just like, "Did the Steadicam come before or after this movie? Because it looks like they just have Steadicam rigs on their waists or whatever, with those heavy artillery." Oh my gosh, everything about this movie, I just like, I can't get past like the fact that I didn't see this movie I saw this movie for the first time. I think I probably talked about this on the last Alien episode that I don't remember being on, which is why I'm probably going to say it again. But like, I saw this for the first time as like probably a 10-year-old or something, watching it on like early morning. Like it was on like USA Network or whatever, just whatever it was at the time. And but it was still like, they hadn't edited the violence out of it, but they edited the language out. And I was just flipping through channels and just saw Bishop get torn apart at the end of it, and it totally traumatized me. But I had never seen it up until that point, but I had been playing with the toys for 4 or 5 years at that point. So it was weird seeing the movie for the first time as an adult later on and like tracking everybody and knowing exactly who Apone was because I played with this toy as a kid. Whereas like, it's weird to know the action figure before the movie character, and that's what I had experienced.
Yeah, I mean, was it weird when you saw the movie and you're like, where'd all his muscles go?
Well, for me, it wasn't just the muscles. It was sort of the outfit, but also like Corporal Hicks, like his action figure, like was like his whole thing was like he had a big old rocket launcher over his shoulder. That was like the thing that came with him, and he was all about this rocket launcher. And I just kept waiting for him to do something cool with a rocket launcher the first time I saw it. And he did a lot of cool stuff, but not with a rocket launcher. Apone had these like grenades he would sling in the comics and the toys or whatever, and like he didn't have any. I mean, did he? He didn't toss any grenades in that movie.
I don't think so.
Bishop was like all metal and everything. We discussed this last time as well. I don't understand the toy of Bishop versus the actual actor that played Bishop. Like it was just the toy thing. I'll never get past it. I'll never get past how weird the toys were for this movie, that they were so huge.
They're still weird.
Yeah.
It hasn't changed. I mean, different licensees have picked up the franchise over time. And so there are a lot of like really great realistic xenomorph figures, and I have a Ripley in her spacesuit and everything from the first movie. And you can get really great realistic models of these characters, but they also still make the crazy xenomorphs that are like Rhino Xenomorph, Dark Crystal Xenomorph, all these really crazy wild variants.
Which it's just great lore.
It's hilarious.
I love it. It's excellent lore though, because I mean, like I think that came after Alien 3 when they're like, whatever the xenomorph comes out of, it takes a little bit of its DNA, so
Exactly.
I think that's where they kind of gathered all that from, which is really fun. But as a kid, you just go into these movies like I couldn't wait to see the gorilla alien or like the flying queen alien and like all this stuff, and then lo and behold, it doesn't exist at all. Like,
Right? No, the queen takes the elevator.
yeah, which is so good. Like I was like at one point I was like talking with Erin while we were watching. I was like, "Are the aliens intelligent?" And I'm like, though they're intelligent in the way like maybe a dolphin is, and then suddenly they're taking an elevator, and I'm like, "Oh, this is a different level of intelligence."
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, is it just in my mind, or like when Ripley gets in the thing and then goes up, and then it cuts back to the alien queen, and the second elevator comes down to the floor? Does she kind of like cock her head?
Yes.
a little bit.
Yeah, she does like a little puppy dog. Exactly what Olivia, my little dachshund, does. She just turns her head to the side. She's like, huh? Like if I open the refrigerator, it's like, huh? It cocks the head. She's like, oh. But like but it implies a higher level of intelligence. And also the other, I mean, we're all over the place right now. I'm sorry, Deanna.
It's okay.
But like the level of intelligence thing for the xenomorphs is like that whole thing when Ripley is kind of having the standoff at the end.
Yeah.
With a flamethrower, there's like this communication going on where like you wouldn't it's more than just like, okay, a human and a lion meet and the human's holding a torch or something and waving it in front of the lion backs off because the fire is scary or whatever. It's more than that because the queen looks at its little henchman xenomorphs and is like, guys, back off. Back
Exactly.
off.
Stand down.
Let her go. It's like, I don't know that, they would all... I don't know. It's just this weird level of intelligence that I think is really fascinating. It probably comes from the genetic thing of them erupting from humans.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting. I'm sorry.
I know this is the end of the movie, but I want to dig into that for a minute because I took a note of that because I've seen this movie before, but this is the first time I thought like, is she telling them to stand down so she's gonna let Ripley go? Is that the case? Like, does she feel threatened, and does she think that if she lets Ripley go, that she's not going to destroy everything? Like, if Ripley didn't blast everything to hell, would she have just got in the elevator and gone back upstairs? Like,
that's how I interpreted it.
That's so interesting.
Deanna, what do you think?
Yeah, it definitely felt that way. It was one of those things where it's like, this is an odd interaction at first. And as you continue watching it, you're just like, huh, that really makes you think about sort of how much the aliens are processing, like in whatever version of a brain they have. And it was kind of like the alien wanted there to be some sort of understanding between her and Ripley.
I want to understand what's going on in Ripley's mind, though. Like, Ripley knows before she gets down there that the entire place is going to blow up. Like, I totally understand that Ripley's like, she has a deep-seated hatred for these bugs. She hates them, and she wants them all destroyed. But she knows that they're going to be destroyed as soon as she leaves. And she knows that she only has a couple of minutes to get back into the chopper.
Yeah.
She has the kid. She could go. She makes a choice.
She had safe passage, it would seem. Yeah, that is crazy. I have never thought of that before. That, like, she didn't need to torture. Like, it has to be the deep-seated hatred, which I think is brilliant writing. It's like just this vindictiveness, like this like anger, this pure hatred towards this species that has thwarted her, like just threatened her life twice at this point, which is just like, maybe this is a good point to jump back to the beginning because like what a thing for her to do to go on this mission after what she experienced.
Yeah, I do feel like the end of this movie feels very similar to the first one. In my opinion, you've got the klaxons going off. Time to leave. You got Mother coming over the speaker telling you you've got to go, and yet she's going back in. Like, it's exactly what happened in the first one. It's just higher stakes because you have more aliens. You're kind of going like underground, and then there's this big nasty egg-laying queen. So it definitely ups the stakes, but it's also very familiar.
There's also like a big focus on family in this one in sort of an abstract sense, I guess, because at the beginning we find out that, Ripley's been in stasis for like 57 years, I think it is. And so her daughter has since passed away while she was in stasis. And you have a lot of foreshadowing there. And then she finds out that there are families living on this planet, and she's just like, what are these people thinking? They're absolutely insane. And then as soon as we meet Newt later in the movie, she sort of becomes this surrogate daughter for Ripley. And I think that was just a really interesting approach to that because of the fact that Ripley was like, I was supposed to be there for her 11th birthday, I think she says, for her daughter. And so she sort of has that motherly instinct still because she was in stasis. So it just kind of came full circle really nicely, I thought.
See, and this is one of the differences between the cuts of the movie, because it's even more abstract in the theatrical version where they don't have that extended scene where it's explained that she had a daughter and that her daughter died. That's not in the movie. which I think really undercuts the rest of the film.
Now, how much of that isn't in the theatrical? Is any of it? Because
None of it.
Okay, so maybe I've never seen the theatrical cut then, because I remember Paul Reiser or whoever talking to her about her daughter in every time I've seen the movie. So I guess I'd probably only seen extended cuts, which is insane.
Yeah, because if I recall correctly, the scene where it's explained that Amanda passed away, that took place in that like faux garden where there's like the screened garden thing, and she's like sitting there with a super long ash cigarette.
No, isn't that in the hospital bed before the? I guess I'm confused.
I remember her getting handed like a hollow pad thing, like an iPad basically.
When did she have the dream? Because they do the fake out thing where she wakes up and everything's fine, and then how long have I been out? You get a bunch of exposition, then suddenly the thing pops out of her chest, which is a really interesting writing technique, I think, to have exposition that is factual delivered in a dream sequence, and then to cut back and it's like, well, the dream sequence was your exposition. It's I don't know, like being visited by a dead relative or something like that in a dream or something, like in order to inform the audience of what's going on. But it's just like, it's weird because it's just like a scene out of the movie that just ends different than reality. I don't know. It was interesting writing to me.
Yeah, I mean, there's really nothing. There's nothing on Amanda. So like, you go into the movie, you know that she's traumatized by the events of the first film. She learns at the end of the Inquisition that there are like 60 families or something living on LV 426, and she sits with that for a long time, and then she makes the decision to go. But that's all you know. And so when she gets to the planet and she begins interacting with Newt, like, it definitely feels like a motherly sort of interaction. She's filling in a void that Newt had, right?
Right.
Like, Newt lost her mom, so she's stepping in for that. But when you don't have the context, the background of Ellen Ripley losing her own daughter, it's not like Newt is filling that role for her. It feels very one-sided.
Okay, so it's more like in the theatrical cut, she's sort of just being protective of her because she's a child.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, the only sort of like maternal reference that they even make between the two of them is at the end when Newt like says mommy. It's her like last line of the movie. That's still left in, but I feel like that it doesn't quite hit home quite as hard when you don't have the additional stuff about Ripley. So that's one thing that I missed from the special edition cut.
That's wild. I totally didn't interpret it. I didn't understand that was different in. I don't know. I've just always taken it for granted that she was a mother.
Yeah.
Wow. But I feel like that mommy line really hits the nail on the head a little bit too hard for me. Like, I don't feel like she needed to yell mommy.
Right.
there.
Yeah, I mean, she said it kind of meekly. Like, she says it quietly, but they could have cut it. They just wanted to give her one last line.
But it was also just like so like, I mean, I feel like we would have gotten the mother-daughter kind of thing
Without that.
Yeah, even without like, or let it just be unspoken, that she has this maternal instinct for her. Because I mean, with the queen alien, like, I mean, there's this whole mirror thing going on at the end. Maybe it's more clear after Alien 3 or something that we can look at aliens and see that this mirror thing is happening with the queen protecting its young and she's protecting her young, like that whole thing. But like, I don't know. I just feel like it was very good before they said it out loud.
Yeah, it did need to be said. So here's a question. Speaking of like taking care of things and maternal instincts, who takes care of Jones when Ripley leaves?
The cat?
Yeah.
I guess the nurse.
Poor thing's just left behind. Like, she's just like, you're staying here.
Okay, so here's a question. So with the extended cut, we have it cuts away, the scene happens, the hearing happens, I guess, or what, deposition? I don't know what it is.
I think it's a deposition, basically.
Yeah, and where she's basically giving her testimony to the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, saying, like, this happened and XYZ happened and this is why it happened. And they don't believe her, and they say, we have colonists. And then it cuts to the colony. Now, in the theatrical edition, do we have a cut to the colony?
No.
No,
you don't. You don't get anything. You don't get anything about Hadley's Hope prior to them actually landing there. And somebody replied to me on Mastodon this week about that, because I tweeted about having watched the theatrical edition and what I would want to keep from the special edition in the film if I were to cut it myself. And they mentioned that. They said, like, without the before scenes on LV-426, it appears to be a massive coincidence that contact is lost with the colony coincidentally within weeks of finding Ripley drifting in space for 70 plus years. Now, there's a couple of things wrong with that, but like, I think that is mostly unnecessary. I wouldn't bring it back because it's explained to Ripley when, you know, when she confronts Burke that he's the one that like sent the colonists out to find the derelict spaceship. Like, we know what happened. The earlier scenes established that there was a thriving colony and that there is like, you know,
population
risk of people,
176 thriving.
Yeah, that's
thriving
all
colony.
you need to know. You don't need to know anything more than that. So I would have probably left those scenes out.
I would too, and maybe for like a little bit different reasons. Like, well, so I have to come back to this question though, which is, okay, so we go from the deposition scene, it ends. How much time has passed between when Paul Reiser comes to get her to say, like, is there a title card, or is there something? I missed it. Like, I didn't really gather it. And what happens?
Oh yeah, it's like a couple of weeks.
That's it. Because she gets a haircut, she's working on the loading docks, and she's doing her thing there. Like,
Oh God, he's so condescending to her when he's just like, I heard you're working the loading docks.
yeah,
And he's just like, that's fine. That's fine.
yeah. I mean, like, if I had just been through what she'd been through, I would also take the most menial job, like mindless menial job that would just keep me like safe forever. I would work at a desk for the rest of my life happily and never encounter
Yeah.
another alien again. But Paul
Right.
Reiser's trying to be like, but I think that's what makes Ripley an amazing character and a brave character and all the things that make a great heroine. You know, like, it's just like, it's a person who puts herself in danger knowing that it's the right thing to do, or that like she's just so brave. I kept saying that over and over again. Like, she's so brave. Like, she's just such a wonderful character. And like,
Yeah.
and like, I don't know, they say like bravery versus stupidity or whatever, but like that she walks right back into it. And that's partly why I think seeing the before shots of the colony don't really help me at all, because without those scenes, you get to experience this pretty much through Ripley's eyes. Like, there's people coming in, like Paul Reiser's character or whatever, but you get to experience the sequence of events through just Ripley. So she's
Right.
like, she gets woken up, she gets told all this thing, she gets told she's probably a liar, like she gets a job at a loading dock. Then he's like, hey, by the way, remember that colony we told you about? We lost contact with it, and like, I don't know, like, we need to go check it out, and we just got to be. You're the only one who really knows this place, so why don't you come with us? Like, you're not knowing, like, you're thinking like maybe it's not going to be so bad, but like by showing the before scenes and showing that thriving colony, like, you get there and you know something bad immediately happened because you've seen what it was like before it happened, and you've seen the alien attached to Newt's family. That's not also in the theatrical cut, right?
Yeah, nothing with Newt's family is in there.
Okay, so you don't see the xenomorph coming out of the ship. No, sorry, the face hugger coming out of the ship. You don't see.
Right.
So like none of that happens. So it's still like not really a mystery, but it's sort of still a mystery when Ripley lands on that planet in the theatrical cut.
That's right. And it becomes it's a surprise. Like, it's more of a surprise when she confronts Burke and she puts it all together. Like, when she finally understands.
Which is so wonderful. It's so wonderful, that feeling in the theatrical cut. And that's what, like, when I'm watching the extended cut, I was like, it's like less intriguing, because it's like watching a movie based on a historical event or something. Like, I don't know why, but Passion of the Christ is coming to my mind immediately. Really weird pick. Problematic director, I know. But like, just like, you know, you watching this movie and you're like, well, Jesus is going to die at the end of this, and you're just like hoping it's not going to happen, but you know it's going to happen. I'm just thinking the most inevitable ending of a movie ever.
Sure.
So when I'm watching Aliens, it's like there's still this hope that I have that like, oh, she's just going to check out this planet, and like maybe nothing happened over the past 50 something years, and that maybe, you know, they stayed contained somehow. And the mystery of how, like, when, like you said, when they reveal it to Paul Reiser, like, I think, or when they reveal Paul Reiser sent him out, it's just such a more satisfying reveal that that's what happened. I don't know. It seems like a better writing, I guess, in the theatrical version, which is weird because the extended cut is how it was written.
I did find a timeline that was sort of compiled from bits and pieces from the DVD specials that give an idea of, Ripley being found on May 16th. The inquiry happens on June 12th. And that same day, Burke tells Hadley's Hope to go check out this derelict spacecraft. So that happens on the same day. The Inquiry and the team going out to like find the eggs. They lose contact by July 3rd, and then July 6th, Ripley decides that she's going to go. And then they don't get there until July 27th. So she's been, Newt was like on her own for a month.
Okay.
Basically a full month.
Amazing that she lasted that long. Wow.
I know. I think they make it clear. I guess I don't know how they, like, there's a lot of stuff that, like, I guess for lack of a better term, the plot armor of everything, where it's like, Newt has to survive because the plot dictates it. But, how did the aliens not find her in that little spot? Because she's quiet, because her feet are small, because she doesn't create such a... I mean, I don't know how the aliens sense.
They can't fit.
Well, I mean, but they come through the ceilings in the later scenes, so it's like they clearly are resourceful little guys, but like maybe they just don't really see her as a viable host, but they tie her up later, so I don't know. There's a lot of weird like lore stuff you could probably figure out how she survived, but yeah, it is remarkable that she made it, considering she was the only one.
Well, she mostly stayed in the vents, mostly.
Well, she has that little bedroom that's
right.
Ripley, unless that
Her
was
little trash pile.
Yeah, her little trash pile. Trash girl.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's feasible, but it's also one of those things where you just kind of have to suspend belief for a little bit. And
yeah, which is not hard to do. It's a movie about giant aliens on a distant planet.
Exactly. And I think that with aliens, it's not necessarily that they're trying to top Alien and make it bigger and better and just have more of them for no real reason, but the fact that the first movie introduces this one, and it's the whole introduction to the xenomorphs in general, it makes sense that as time goes on, there would be a lot more of them in a contained area, if you will. And so this didn't feel like it was a sequel for the sake of sequels necessarily. I know we've probably talked about this with like Marvel and Star Wars stuff over the years, and there are certain things where you're like, yeah, we didn't need that. But I think it's not that it's a movie we needed necessarily, but it doesn't take away or try to change anything from the first movie other than them saying that Ripley was a liar. But it also just advances things as a whole, with them deciding to have a whole colony now instead of just sending like a group of people out.
Yeah, and it totally blows open the biology of the species, right? Like at the beginning in the first movie, we get the eggs.
Yeah.
Okay, and then there's the face hugger, and then there's the chest burster, which grows into the full-blown xenomorph. And that's all we know. And we don't even have a name for the xenomorph. So there's really not much to go on. It's kind of hard to understand, like, okay, but where do the eggs come from? And now we know where the eggs come from. Like it just starts building on the biology of these creatures, which, again, if you get further into this series, Deanna, and I hope you do. We
can't talk about Prometheus right now. Okay.
No, I know.
Okay, because I was going to start talking about Prometheus and what we gather from that, but that's a conversation for you and I later, Jacob. It seems.
It gets a whole lot crazier, but that's where, again, like it starts building that franchise out into something that we do want more of. Yeah, I mean, maybe people are asking for more Alien, maybe they weren't. I don't know. I wasn't alive at the time, but we got it. And then from then on, yeah, people were asking for it. And as a result of that, we were getting, new Alien movies on a pretty regular cadence from then on out. The next one came out in the 90s, and then another one later. And then we started getting all the spinoffs. And
I haven't seen Resurrection.
That's fine.
I think you said the exact same thing last time in the episode. I can't remember. This is truly a deja vu moment. Imagine listening to these episodes back to back because you really love Alien and you really love Deanna's show, and you're just like, these idiots. This one idiot who keeps saying the same thing he said last episode.
Yeah, at the very least, watch 3. I love 3. I'm an advocate for 3. People start kind of dropping off at 3, and some will say it's diminishing returns. I say that that's not true.
Look, if I can watch 3 Children of the Corn movies, I can definitely handle 3 Alien movies, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
3 is excellent. But the original, maybe this is for a later episode when we talk about Aliens 3, but...
I'll bring the podcast back just for that.
Please. Episode 301, Alien 3. Just like the original concept though for Alien 3 was so much better, I feel like I don't know, just from a production design standpoint, it was really intriguing.
The director of that movie has disowned it, but I felt it was a real return to form. Like, it was a back to basics approach to Alien, which I really appreciate, because as great as this movie is, and I recognize it is a great movie, I love Aliens, it's an action movie.
Right.
It's not what I like most out of the franchise. It has some of that. Like when they first go down into the nest and they like get the first glimpses of people plastered to the walls. That's great. It's super creepy. I love it. But that's what I like the most out of Alien. The tight quarters, the, not knowing what's around the corner, just the atmosphere. And I think that gets lost a little bit when James Cameron's going big.
Yeah, the jump scare thing. Well, I guess Alien was never a jump scary thing. There are some moments like the jazz hands in the vent. I don't know. Would you call like the alien swooping down like the first time you see it? Like that's not really a jump scare. The alien popping out of the chest bursting for the first time. My mom saw that in this movie in theaters. Again, I said this last episode, but my mom saw it in theaters and said she screamed as loud as like, super loud when the alien burst out of the person's chest. Like her and her friend were sitting there just freaked out. So that's, I guess, maybe not a jump scare, but like truly a terrifying image. This movie, like there are a couple good moments. I feel like the face hugger in the tube jumping like really suddenly is a good scare. Bishop's death at the end, traumatizing for me, definitely a good scare.
Well, there's the scene when Burke lets the face huggers loose on Newton Ripley. I think that's a really tense scene. It's also kind of like it feels like a callback to the scene when they lose the face hugger after it leaves Kane's face in the med lab.
Yeah,
it's a very similar scene, but like even more tense because these ones are alive.
Do you feel like if this movie was made in today's day, like with today's like internet and fan bases or whatever, like there would be people being like, "Oh, you just it's a reboot," it's like it's a Force Awakens to Star Wars. I feel like that would happen.
Yeah, I mean it definitely is in a lot of ways. I think that's true.
I think it's great in its expansion though.
Yeah.
Like just the way it expands the universe. Like I feel like in order for this franchise to stay afloat or like to become a franchise at all, you had to expand this universe. And it, like we talked about with the biology, it did it so well by just giving you this company who's just like bringing back a sample of the alien is their goal.
Right.
It's like that was their goal in Alien sort of too, like it was like something's always been going on and it deepens the mystery. And I don't know, it just, it's fantastic.
And I think what's cool about that is they're able to expand the world without actually going to a different world. Like this takes place on 2 different planets, I guess. Like at the beginning, it's not really another planet, but it's another solar system or something. But they go back to the same planet from the first movie. Can you imagine it if that's what happened on Star Wars? Like if they just went back to Tatooine and that's where the entire movie took place?
Kind of like Jakku,
Well, sure. But I mean, that was several movies later.
Right. Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Yeah, they didn't have to like explore the universe to explore the world of the xenomorph. And that is really cool. They do that in the future films, and you kind of have to. Like, you can only retread the same ground so many times. But I don't know. I think that's really neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was definitely more a big picture movie than the first one was, and that's probably why you get James Cameron.
Yeah.
How did he come into this? Was he like asked to do it, or was this like something does he jump to do this kind of thing? Like,
if I recall correctly, he was really interested in doing it.
Okay.
I don't think that Ridley Scott wanted to do a direct sequel. That wasn't really his bag. Like he was ready to just move on and do some other things. And James Cameron had an idea, and I think he pitched it. I could be wrong in that. Again, I'm not super hip to how this one was made.
Which is funny because like he reinvigorated Terminator too. He did the same exact thing with Terminator. Like he just took this horror movie and made it into an action movie and a huge franchise.
Yeah, and he put Bill Paxton in both of them. That's the secret to the success.
Yeah, exactly. And this is Wikipedia, so take it with a grain of salt, probably. But it says Cameron was hired to write a story for Aliens in '83.
Cool.
So he was involved, a good few years before the movie even ended up coming out. So it was still a long process by the time, he was hired to the release because of the lawsuits and whatnot. So he had some time to work it out, sounds like.
That's rad. It's a very James Cameron movie. And I say this with all affection possible. I am a fan. But there are some moments that are, I think, exceptionally corny. Like,
What do you think?
So the moment when Ripley gets into the loader and she's
Oh,
like suiting
yes,
up, and
dude,
then she
that's-
does that
Oh, yeah.
turn, and she's like, "Where do you want it?"
Yep.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about the end of the movie.
No. The first scene when she does that like quick turn
Yeah.
and poses.
I think that's just how like the 1980s were. You know,
I
you had to show she meant business, and there really was no.
It felt very jazzercise.
Well, there was no
You know?
score, right? Wasn't it just
Yeah.
like dead silent in the hangar or something like that? Like I don't know.
Yeah, it was just the sound of hydraulics.
Yeah, which is what you get at the end too, and she's like, "Get away from her, you bitch!" Like the best line
Yeah.
in all of cinema. Just so excellent. But
But quickly followed by one of the worst lines in cinema, which is "not bad for a human."
oh yeah,
I hate that line so much.
which is funny because he's like so tolerant throughout the whole thing. Like he doesn't really.
Right.
I guess he's being sarcastic, but like, or just
Yeah, because she's come around on him, right? Like she puts a lot of trust in him after showing initially that she has a lot of prejudice.
which is insane that she still has the patience for him because he comes back for her, but like. Which is, it's also a funny thing because in all the other series, all the other installations of this series, like, and the comics, I should say, or like, which I've been reading the Marvel versions of, the new ones, the Bishop cyborgs or androids are super duplicitous. Like, even the ones that are Bishop models, they're really messed up and conniving and do secretive things. And I don't, like, it's just, it's like a crazy, like, thing that she just comes around on him at the very end because he happened to save her. But like I would have been so furious, and after what she went through the first time, like she can't trust, she wouldn't be able to trust him. I don't know, it's
I mean, to be fair, like she can't be in total disbelief that he left. Like the place is falling apart. She's way late. She really cut it close.
but he can't do anything. His programming says he can't do anything that would put a human in danger. So even
That's
if
true.
he couldn't, he probably couldn't. Well, could he leave?
Well, it's a dilemma because, he's got Hicks on board.
Oh yeah, he's got the paradox, the old robot paradox.
Yeah.
Plus, there may be some override thing that like damage to him. No, well, like, I don't know, maybe not.
Yeah.
Gosh, what else? What should we talk about?
Well, okay, there's one more corny moment that I thought I'd bring up just because I know that you're like a fan of Vasquez. But there's that first bit where Vasquez and Drake are putting on their Lancers and they're just like swinging them around in tandem. It's very
I love
choreographed.
That. All these, that's what I said at the beginning. I talked about that at the beginning. I think that moment, all your corny moments are like my favorite moments from this movie. Like
It's too coordinated. Like it's too choreographed for me.
they're running drills, man. They got it. They're Marines. They are Marines. The best of the best.
It's more Swan Lake than, Cadet Kelly for me.
Cadet Kelly is your military reference?
Yeah.
That's a Disney Channel movie starring Hilary Duff and Christy Carlson Romano?
Nailed it.
What? Like, I don't understand. You could have got
They do drill. They're on the drill team. That's like the whole bit.
Full Metal Jacket. Like,
Sure.
Okay. But I did watch Cadet Kelly on Disney Channel. So
I did not.
I mean, you got it. You understood it what I was talking about right away, so I won't feel bad about this.
yeah, well, I mean, your reference hit home. So I applaud it, but I also am just puzzled by it, 100%. Corny moments. Like speaking of corny moments, like I feel like. I mean, I'm sure there's other bad parts I'm overlooking, but like I feel like the worst part of this movie was the alien suits for me. I think they're cool designs, but like I think it was still just kind of guy in a suit for me. But except for one scene, which I thought was amazing, when I forget which part. I think it's the final scene, or like in the nest. I think when the alien does the wall bounces, it goes back and forth off in the small corridor. I thought that was excellent because you never see humans move like that, and it was all practical. So I thought that was really cool. But other than that, I found it very much guy in a suit kind of effects, while it was a very good suit.
One thing I've never like totally understood is when the queen separates from the back part of herself. Like, is that normal? Or is that something that was done out of, just the extreme circumstances?
I feel like termites are probably the best, like, because the queen reminds me, like, her physiology is a lot like a queen of a termite. Like a termite has like a huge egg sac on the back of it,
Right.
Which is repulsive actually to think about now.
But if you pull that off, does it die?
I don't think so, because it's like you know what? We should ask what's the bug scientist, entomologist, or is it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
That's right.
that sounds right.
let's get the entomologist on the phone.
Do you have one? on call?
I'm sure I can go through my Rolodex right now to find entomologist. Yeah, I don't know. I did see one, like a dead queen ant or something like some queen insect outside my house when I was a kid. It was like drying up on the pavement, so it had like crawled out of its hive or something, and it was kind of dragging this big sack behind it, which was repulsive.
Sounds terrible.
So it sounds like it was dying with the thing on it, so it's really hard to say which came first, the egg sac killing it or it just dying on its own.
Also, logistically, like the room that she's in, you have this array sort of grid of eggs that go across the entire room. But it definitely seems like the tube part of the queen was kind of like tied up to the ceiling.
Well, it's like drones. That's what the drones are for. They come and pick up the egg and put it in a nice little pile.
They're actually picking them up and moving them around?
Yeah, isn't that what bees do and stuff? The queen bee lays all those eggs, right? And then
I guess I've just never visualized that before.
yeah, you got to go. You could do some YouTube diving on hive behaviors and stuff. It's really disgusting and also interesting. And probably will put this into perspective. I mean, that's another change with the extended version, right? With they bring up the queen earlier in the film. At least that's what happens when I look at the list. It says that.
Yeah, they do make a mention. I think someone was it
Paxton.
Vasquez and yeah.
It's Paxton says.
Yeah.
What was Paxton's character's name?
Hudson.
Because it's
Hudson.
wait, that's Hudson. Oh, okay. Wait, who is the who is like the stiff that hadn't done
officer?
a drop?
Hicks?
No, the guy who'd never had a drop before. Who's kind of like running the whole shebang.
I never remember his name.
I forget his name. I thought his name was Hudson. So everybody who was shouting at their podcast players when I said that earlier about Vasquez and him dying, just know that I thought that was Hudson, the green guy. But yeah, so Paxton says something about the queen.
And that gets cut out. A couple other ones that I noted. I kind of missed the bit where Hudson's in, I guess, the ship, amping himself in the squat up.
Oh my God, that's great. That's 100% should have been in the theatrical.
We got nukes, we got knives, sharp sticks. I mean, come on, that's a great line.
Yeah.
I'm so sad that was cut.
The more Paxton, the better. The worst part of this movie is that he dies.
Yeah.
Like, truly. I mean, like, all the characters dying is a bummer because, well, most of them are very distinct. I don't know. Like, Vasquez and Drake forever is kind of,
Vasquez gets a book. She got a book that just came out this year. It's a prequel. I don't know what happens in it, but it's there.
Now, here's a question, I guess. It's a bug hunt.
Mm-hmm.
That is something that the Marines are saying when they're getting briefed prior to deployment or whatever. Like, what does that mean in the context of their outfit? Like, is this something they have to do often in going into these hives? Are there smaller scale xenomorphs that they're dealing with? It's a bug hunt, or they're just presuming.
No, because the briefing at the beginning explains what the xenomorphs are. So this is like the first time they've ever encountered xenomorphs. But it's a good question.
Or is bug hunt like a general term that a military person would use in terms of like the enemy combatant or something like that? Or like looking for something that may not be there. Like, I'm wondering if it's metaphorical in a bigger way than it is literally. Like,
I guess I always just took it as like a very general extermination mission.
well, that's the thing about the lore. I don't know what in the lore has been erased or what is canon and what is not. But like, if you look at the comics that were coming out in the 90s or whatever, like Apone and Hicks, they were all like, they were killing aliens all over. So like, it sort of implies that this is a regular thing for them. Yeah, I don't know. That's probably been decanonized or whatever, but that's just something that stuck out to me afterwards.
Yeah.
On either side of it, it's confusing for me because like, well, if there is no other xenomorph, like, are there other aliens in this galaxy this time period?
Yeah, are there some other like, pest species that they often have to get called in for?
Yeah.
I felt like it was a general term for like foreign life forms.
Which is interesting because that would imply other aliens, like
Yes.
that are in this universe, which we don't have. So I don't know. It's stuck. I don't know. It's cool.
I'm gonna have to. That's a thinker. I'm gonna have to look into that. Actually, I kind of want to know. They put out a collection, like a book with like a collection of short stories called Aliens Bug Hunt. Maybe it's explained in there.
Well, you said something about there's a Vasquez prequel, right? Mm-hmm. So I mean, it's definitely not a sequel. So,
Yeah.
But
I imagine there are no xenomorphs in it, which would be really interesting for an Alien franchise novel.
yeah, no, there has to be aliens in it. Like it's an alien thing. Like it's not just like Prometheus or whatever. Like there has to be some sort of alien thing. And we know based on Prometheus that there are other things happening in the galaxy. Like so. I don't know. Like I just feel like
That could be like what if just Vasquez and Drake know or something, or maybe just Vasquez, and that's why like when she's like prepared when they go down there and they have to give up their ammo. Like she makes sure that she's got what she needs no matter what.
Well, that's so, I mean, extending things out without spoiling anything, we know how many more movies are there going to be in the Prometheus saga or whatever was going on. We have Prometheus, we have Covenant, and I think there's a third
There was
one.
supposed to be one more. There was supposed to be.
That leads into the events of Alien. So like, it's like, I mean, it's hard to guess where the events of Covenant would put us, but it seems like, I mean, Deanna, you've seen the trailer for Covenant probably, at least.
Probably.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I won't say anything then. But it would appear that, there's a possibility that humans are dealing with the xenomorphs elsewhere. Also, when you consider Aliens versus Predator, which is, I believe, not canon, right?
Predator?
Aliens versus Predator.
Oh, yeah. No, it's not canon.
AVP, which is insane because the first one is like a straight up like sci-fi horror film, right? They're just in the Arctic in present day.
Yeah.
Like going into like a temple that the predators used to hunt the aliens in, which is insane because the events of Alien take place 100 years after that. And then AVP is just a straight up like, I Know What You Did Last Summer, but with aliens and predators. Like it's just like a teen slasher flick, which is
exactly. It's a travesty. The first one's really fun. I think it's a blast.
Oh yeah. Well, I love seeing the Queen. It was the first time we got to see the Queen in like CG, I think, which I thought was cool. So yeah, I don't know. I got to watch Alien 3 now. Like I think I might do that this weekend because I've only seen the ending as a child. Again, I'm seeing these movies.
You haven't seen the whole thing?
No, I haven't. I mean, like I know the plot of it. I think I read it through when I was reading about the abandoned. Who was going to do the Alien 3 before Fincher got it?
There was another script by William Gibson that made its rounds.
It was one about the monks, like the pill, or whatever they were called, like the religious organization going into outer space that inhabited a wooden planet, which I thought was so much more fascinating than the prison planet.
The script is readily available online, and they also made it into a graphic novel, which is pretty good.
Mm-hmm. And Deanna, you haven't seen Alien 3, right?
Correct.
Okay, then we can't talk about the ending of Aliens.
Okay.
But we will. We will eventually.
Eventually.
The last bit that I thought like was really missing from the theatrical cut that got added back for the special edition, and actually it was first added back for the first time they aired it on TV. They edited back in the Sentries scene.
I thought that was great
for TV. As such a cool scene. Out of all the action in the movie, that's always been my favorite. But it's just not there in the theatrical cut. It's just not there.
I think it's probably a cut for time kind of deal.
Oh, for sure. It's an extended bit.
And because it doesn't really affect the plot, like they get stuck in a sticky situation on either side of it. It's just like a little bit longer, and it shows. I mean, what do we get from the Sentry scene? We get, how strapped the Marines are. Mm-hmm. How like maybe it puts us into their headspace where they think that they can survive, that they are going to be a little bit like they're relying on their technology or their weapons or whatever. But it also puts us into the mindset of understanding the aliens who are just sacrificing themselves against these drones. And something that I also keyed in on, which I've never picked up on before, which is probably me being stupid, but like, so Hadley's Hope was a colony of 157, give or take a few, like if that sign was outdated or whatever. So roughly 150 people on that planet, in that colony for the aliens, which means there's only 150 aliens, give or take. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
At most. If every single host got impregnated and hatched with an alien, which is doubtful. Right. But like, what was the alien? Like, I mean, they were just, I mean, I guess we know from Alien that those eggs can stay there for a long, long time. So it doesn't really matter. Like eventually somebody's going to come.
That's exactly what the Sentries, reinforces. It's like, they're reminding you of the scale of the infestation.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, okay. Like there are a bunch of people missing. However, their numbers have, been repopulated by this really nasty species, and they're just going to keep coming, and you better hope you have enough ammo. I just love that bit because you just never know. You're so tense. You're like, is it going to work?
But they don't run out of ammo.
What, the Sentries? The Sentries do.
No, don't they come down to like 10 or whatever, and they're like, high five, and like they stopped. They're like, we stopped them, and they have a little bit of ammo left.
I think so.
And then we do the ceiling gag.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right. That's where it cuts back in the theatrical edition. They there's like the one bit where Vasquez and Hicks come back in from the hallway and they like seal the door, and that immediately cuts to the aliens are coming closer and they come through the ceilings.
Yeah, that was, oh man. So the second time I watched this movie, was as like a 16-year-old or whatever. It was like the hottest summer night in Boston or whatever, and I was in my basement. I watched it on TV, so with commercial breaks and everything. But I just remember being so disturbed by the aliens in the ceiling. It was terrifying to think about. And like just I remember sleeping with all
It's
the
a good
windows
shot.
open because there was like no air conditioning in this Boston summer or whatever, and just sitting there being terrified, thinking about the last scene with Bishop and like being torn in half and the aliens in the ceiling. And it just, oh man, like they're right on top of us. They're in the room with us. It's like, I mean, don't you think they would have figured it out a little bit sooner though?
Yeah.
As soon as they get past the door, they're like, oh, they're in the ceiling. Like,
They've shown time and time again in just that movie alone that they have absolutely no idea how that motion sensor works. Like,
yeah.
when they run into the gerbil, when they find Newt, like they're like, oh, it doesn't make any sense. It's right here. Where is it? And then it's right there. It's like, just think about it. Think in the, in the third dimension.
This movie still, it sort of has a Star Wars prequel thing going on in terms of technology, obviously because of the time periods they were made in, but like it's sort of like, flat screens in the future, but in the past a lot more reliant on holograms and stuff. And that's what this movie does too. It's like Aaron was like, wait, Prometheus, like they had better technology in Prometheus. I feel like it was just,
Well, no spoilers, but like think about whose technology it was.
I'm trying to remember, and I probably need to do a rewatch, but I don't know. We'll talk about this later.
I did like the phone that Ripley has, like the video
Yeah.
phone. I thought that
okay.
was cool because so Burke leaves his business card, which is like a total classic move, but you don't really think of it, anymore past that until she wakes up in the middle of the night and she like slams it into the thing like a cartridge. Like it's an actual, like the business card is actually
Yeah.
functional. Like it has use, which I thought was a really cool touch.
That was fun.
And when she wants to hang up, she just yanks it out. She doesn't hit end call. She just yanks it out.
Yeah, it was great.
I love that.
They're innovating.
So, Jake, quick question for you. Of the different scenes that are included in the extended cut and not in the theatrical version, would you say that that scene where Ripley finds out that her daughter died is probably the one that, I guess, changes your perception the most about stuff that happens later in the movie?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the movie as, like a science fiction vehicle for a story about motherhood and loss, like losing and finding family and what it means to be a mother or a daughter, I think a lot of that is lost without knowing very explicitly that Ripley lost something. When you go into it from the theatrical edition point of view, Ripley lost her crew. She lost 57 years of her life. But it's an entirely different thing to not only lose your daughter, but have your daughter live an entire life without you, with the promise that you were coming home. Like that's a much heavier thing. And so for that to not be there, it lessens Ripley's story and it makes her and Newt's story a little bit less meaningful. I think you still get a lot of the maternal impact that she has on Newt, but I don't think you get what Newt gives her back.
That's fair. I think there was a 17-minute difference between the two cuts, if I'm remembering correctly, which is a good amount of time. So there was definitely a lot of smaller scenes here and there that were cut.
And most of them could have remained on the cutting room floor, honestly. They don't really add too much.
Yeah.
An interesting fact about this is that this was the only cut of the original 4 Alien movies that was made prior to the quadrilogy. So like when they put out the DVD set, they specifically asked, Ridley Scott and Fincher and whoever did 4, I always forget. They asked them to go back and do like an extra cut as a selling point for the DVD. And in the case of Alien, it's awesome because Ridley got to go back and like make the movie exactly how he wanted it. And it's not a huge change. It just kind of, I think we talked about this before, just adds some atmosphere to the film.
Yeah.
James Cameron just wanted to do this anyway because this was the cut he wanted to give them. And they're like, no, it's too long. So he cut it and it's still a really long movie, but this is the version that he wanted out initially. So this is like a true director's cut. He prefers this version of the film, the special edition.
When we're talking about the Ridley Scott Alien cut versus, I feel like that scene, an extra scene in Alien was the cocoons, right? With Dallas, when you see Dallas again. And I feel like that like that is a scene that I really loved in the director's cut, and I feel like it does add a lot, especially when you look at the cocooning that happens in Aliens. Like those, it pays off in spades. Like it's just a really, really nice thing to include in the first movie to make it make more sense in the second movie. But like, I just wonder, like, I don't like, did Cameron draw from that? I guess.
Yeah, I'm sure he did. I mean, surely he has access to everything that's available.
You think he met with Ridley Scott? Ridley Scott was like, "Listen, James, the aliens, they have this cocoon thing. You didn't get to see it, and the studio won't let me have the reels.
It's there."
But they have these really sticky boogers.
Yeah,
Amazing.
exactly. I mean, there's just. Yeah. It's just they seem very in sync.
Yeah, in retrospect it does, but I'm sure like if you saw Alien in theaters and then you saw Aliens in theaters and then the next time you watched Alien, you saw the special edition, it would almost seem like a retcon. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, somehow this got added back in after the success of the second film.
Yeah, glad I didn't do it that way.
I don't remember, Deanna, I'll have to review my notes, but I'll let you know which version of 3 you should watch.
Okay.
Because they're different enough that it kind of matters.
The new one I was watching, because they examined some of the effects, the creature effects, which it's a puppet a lot of the time in that movie.
That's right. In one version.
It's a puppet, which is, they use motion tracking cameras. And they shot, a plate with the motion tracking, and then they shot with the actors or whatever. And then they sort of keyed in the puppet. And so, like, the movement, like, I thought it was stop motion. I think it might be. Is it stop motion in some scenes?
Yeah, there's, like, that one shot that almost takes place from, like, the point of view of a security camera.
Oh, yeah.
That one's definitely stop motion when it kind of, like, scurries away. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, I can't remember shot for shot. But, yeah, there was a mix. There was some CGI as well that ended up being used more in one of the cuts.
Well, that's what happened in the Not, I don't know if it's director's cut, but it's like the remastered editions or whatever of Alien 3. Like
they all have so many different titles.
Well, they replaced, I think, some of the puppets with CG. So it's like that is the question of how you want to experience the movie. It's like, do you want CG or puppets? The puppets look freaky though, and they just showed them walking around the set and everything.
There are some other differences as well, and I swear I've talked about this on a podcast before. Maybe it was an episode of Podcasm, but I've talked about Alien 3 at length at some point. And there is one cut that has a storyline which I'm really quite fond of. So that's the one I'll make sure that you watch.
Yeah,
nice.
Just let me know and I will continue my Alien franchise watching.
I think overall it's a very rewarding franchise. It's not Children of the Corn. It's not Puppet Master.
Most things are not Children of the Corn, thankfully.
It's rewarding to me because I don't think it ever needs to explode into like this kind of like Infinity War Endgame-esque type battle for like
end of the world kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's always a butterfly effect struggle for the fate of humanity, if you think about it, like in terms of like one alien can make everything awful for everybody. Mm-hmm. And that I think that's highlighted by Alien 3 most of all, but it is like there's never going to be like a Starship Troopers, like we're not going to need a Starship Troopers movie where the xenomorphs are doing that. Like we have Edge of Tomorrow, we have like all of the alien warring on humans kind of thing in a huge fashion, because we know humans wouldn't stand a chance, like first of all, but like I know we come out on top most of the time in these movies, but like in an all-out war, like we can't compete, with acid blood.
Yeah.
Well, you can. They made a whole game about it. It's called Aliens Fireteam, and you promised you were going to play with me, Mike. So.
Oh, I have to play that with you. I have it. I have my rig set up. We can play.
Okay, sweet. I'm excited. It's a very good game.
It's probably on sale right now, huh? That Steam autumn sale is happening.
Yeah, it's usually on sale.
Is it fun?
Like most Alien titles. Yes, I have a blast. It's fun when you're playing with people you know.
Is it scary?
I mean, it can be, but like once you get into the flow of it, I don't think it's that scary.
Okay.
It's tense though. It's really tense.
Oh, well, I guess I'll try it. I played Prey, so I feel like that's pretty spooky space sim.
It's as different from Alien Isolation as you can get.
Oh yeah, I have been struggling to bring myself
someday
to play that game.
Someday you gotta. So good.
Which is that's a great entry into the lore as well. Just because you got Amanda's story.
Yeah, and it dips into there's kind of like a flashback sort of side quest thing that you get to play in the original cast. And I think there was some DLC with the original cast as well.
I think the only way I'll be able to experience isolation is like a YouTube Let's Play or something like that, because the amount of stress I feel when I play a scary video game is not worth the enjoyment that I get out of it, or like the story I'm pulling from it. And so I need to be able to just turn it off and walk away, which I know you can do with a video game, but it's different when you are actively trying to not die.
Yeah.
I also, like, there was a Reddit post. I'm in the Patient Gamer subreddit, which is just people who don't want to pay full price for video games, so they wait 2 to 5 years for them to come out on sale. And there was an Alien Isolation post last week, I think, and they were just talking about play styles and how interesting, like, a lot of people just want to stay in a locker and hide from the alien forever. But in reality, you need to play it as if you were a human. You need to, like, get to your objective. You need to, like, the game encourages not sitting still. Which is like the fight or flight or cower, I guess, is the third option.
I mean, you can still play it very conservatively. I felt like I did. I was very sneaky throughout the entire game. But that's also how I played, like, Assassin's Creed.
Okay.
That's just my play style.
Aggressive sneakiness.
Sure.
The patient gamers call it aggressive sneakiness, where you just need to just get to your objective and not really so much worry about, like, waiting for the alien to pass, because you can sometimes get corralled or something like that, you know, by the alien, and because the AI is, like, built in a certain way, it basically knows where you are, gets hints as to where you are. I don't know. It's too scary for me. But I also said these movies are too scary for me when I was a kid, and that I wouldn't be able to watch them. And now there's, like, truly some of my highest rated movies that I've ever seen.
Yeah, it seems like it'll be a fun franchise to keep going with, so I will definitely be doing that.
Well, which is your favorite of the two that you've seen so far? I'm so curious to know, like, which do you prefer?
I think I rated Alien 5 stars and gave this 4.5. So I would probably be more inclined to watch Alien again before rewatching this. I'll probably eventually watch the theatrical cut just to see what it's like for Aliens, but having seen both cuts of Alien, I probably prefer the longer cut of that one. And then TBD on this one once I get around to watching the theatrical cut. But I did really enjoy the extended cut.
So you said you gave Alien 5 stars and Aliens 4.5.
I think so.
Is there anything specific that made you pull back on that half star? I also gave it 4.5 stars, but just curious.
I think some of it was just, it didn't have the same tension, I guess, because of all of the various, like, comedic relief coming from the military unit, and the fact that a lot of scenes focused more on them than on Ripley at times. And it kind of felt like there were a few too many moments where they sort of just pushed Ripley to the back seat. And I was like, okay, but this is her movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I agree with that. I feel like I had a thought, and this is going to be very controversial. So controversial thought coming out right now, you guys. Out of, like, all the movies that I do or do not, like, want to, like, see a remake of, I feel like if the right director was given the opportunity to do this, and, like, not saddled with, like, the stuff that, like, Hollywood saddles directors with in terms of, like, testing and all that stuff, like, if they could make, like, a true to the original remake with updated effects, and, like, maybe not a shot-for-shot remake, but, like, just a very artistically crafted remake of Alien. I mean, maybe that's what Prometheus is supposed to be, but, like, I would be down to see what someone could do with that, like, making a very nuanced horror film, you know, because we have a lot of nuanced horror now, and, like, nuanced creatures. And
Put Mike Flanagan on it.
what does Mike Flanagan do?
He's done Haunting of Hill House,
Hill
Bly
House.
Manor, Dr. Sleep,
Okay.
a lot of horror stuff.
Midnight Mass.
He does a lot of good work in, like, Hill House and Bly Manor in particular, with the use of shadows that I think could be really cool with Alien.
Yeah, I'm not as well versed in horror as you, but I don't know. I just feel like it would be, like, it's probably not something for another, like, 10 years or so,
Yeah.
but, like, an Alien remake would be kind of cool to see, I feel like.
I have absolutely zero interest in that, but I bet they'll do it.
It would have to be good. It can't be like The Thing when they rebooted that or whatever. I don't need a reboot. Like, I would like to see, like, a new... I want to see Ariana Grande play Ripley is really what it is. You know, I just...
What?
What?
Why?
Wait, who would you cast? No, like Florence Pugh, okay, as Ripley. I think it would work.
Yeah, I think she could do it.
That's a much better pick
Yeah,
than Ariana Grande.
Okay, maybe here's the move. Maybe Alien Isolation made into a movie starring Florence Pugh.
Oh, that'd be rad.
Okay.
She'd do a great job.
That's a happy compromise. We're not asking you to remake Alien. We're giving you sort of a new, because like I don't know. I'm really intrigued by the lore of Alien Isolation, and
It's a really good story. I don't know if it has enough meat, and like I don't think the pacing is right for a movie.
right,
Well, anything else, guys?
Drake and Vasquez forever. A friendship that truly, truly one of the greatest movie friendships depicted ever.
It's fun.
I enjoy this movie every time I see it. I feel like I stray away from it though. Like I don't generally put this one on when I want to watch an Alien movie, and I guess that's why on Letterboxd I've watched, marked as watched and made diary entries for Alien 6 or 7 times, and Aliens I've only seen twice in the last 10 years.
Okay.
It's fun. It's a good
Yeah.
fun movie. I don't know. I'm actually more likely to put on Alien 3 than this one.
Interesting.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm still looking forward to Resurrection. I know you're not. You're not excited for me to see Resurrection, but I think it'll be. I don't know. I just like the story. I like filling out the gaps and what happens, and I can't wait for whatever Ridley Scott does next in this series.
Yeah. Resurrection, the last time I watched it, there were pieces of it that I definitely appreciated more than I did the first time around. Like, my memory of it is so sour that I kind of forgot all of the cool pieces of it, none of which had to do with the story. Just kind of cool stuff that they put on screen that I liked. But yeah, I agree. I also really I absolutely adore the Ridley Scott prequels. I think they're really, really cool movies.
Okay.
Unfortunately, Hollywood did not agree.
So
and
weird.
I don't know if we'll ever get that last one. I don't think we will. I genuinely don't think we're ever going to get it.
So, okay, this is name droppy, but remember you told me I had an interview with Damon Lindelof, writer of Prometheus, and I remember you told me to ask him about it. And at the very end of the interview, he's like, anything else? And I was like, can we talk about Prometheus? And he goes, no, we're gonna need another 2 hours to talk about Prometheus, but like that was his. So I guess that says it all in terms of that franchise or that section of the franchise.
There's a lot to say.
Yeah, like I don't doubt that they could make something really cool and that they could really kind of tie it all together. And that's all it needs. It just needs one more movie to kind of bring it full circle. It's just at this point, I don't think it's going to happen. Ridley's getting really old.
True.
Somebody
He's an
will be
old
able to
dude.
do it in the same way that Tony Gilroy was able to like come in and make a boss Star Wars series with Andor. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like somebody with the right like vision or like the right ethos in terms of movie making will come in. Because like,
Yeah.
say what you want. I think I liked Force Awakens. I think there's a lot that people didn't like, the Disneyfication of Star Wars in that sense, but like J.J. Abrams kind of got Star Wars for the most part, and I feel like as long as they pick the right director,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I can't say his last name, but it's Aaron Guzikowski, I think, who was the showrunner for Raised by Wolves, which was produced by Ridley Scott.
Oh, yeah,
has
yeah.
the exact right tone. So I think he could pull it off if there was a script. Like if there's a decent enough script, I would trust him to carry out Ridley's vision for that third film.
Was Covenant like a flop, like box office wise?
I don't know. I don't pay attention to the box office numbers, but
Well,
I think people just kind of got they were very eye rolly about it because it got, like a lot of Ridley Scott stuff, it got very philosophical. Kind of, it gets more into the origin of man than it does even the origin of the xenomorph, and so people want that. They want more Alien, but this is something else. It makes the world even bigger, and it's just not what I think the audience wanted.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't the original name of Covenant supposed to be like Paradise Lost or something like that?
Yeah, and I maybe I've mentioned this on the first podcast that we did about Alien, but there is a fan editor whose stuff I really like, and he did put together a cut of Prometheus and Alien Covenant like together as one film, and he named it Paradise, and I think it gels pretty nicely. He also did one for Aliens 3 and 4 that were combined, and he called that one Ripley. I've actually not seen that one yet, but I actually might do that now that I've watched the second one. Maybe I'll finally throw that one on.
Yeah, well, I think that wraps it up. Thank you guys.
Thank you, and congrats on 300.
Yeah, it's been a journey.
Well, it's cool. I know we only get to come back for the the milestones, it feels like. Well, I say only get to. It's not like we couldn't come back at other times, or that we haven't. Mike's done several episodes of your podcast talking about Marvel stuff.
Yeah.
But it is nice. It's great to, be pulled in for these awesome milestones. Like I'm just endlessly envious, amazed, and proud that you've been able to do this so consistently for so long. It's remarkable, genuinely.
Yeah, super huge congratulations. And congrats to the listeners for sticking around and being loyal and enjoying all the stuff that Deanna puts out there for you guys.
Yeah, thank you to the listeners for sure. And, it's one of those things where I'm kind of bummed that I won't be doing it as regularly anymore, but at the same time, it's...
Your free time will thank you for it.
Yeah, I'll just end up making videos instead.
Okay, so you're going to fill all your... Okay, she can't stop. She can't stop, y'all.
I really do not know how to, I think, at this point. Like between all of the podcasts I've done, like even going back to Misaligned when I used to talk about music, I've done well over 600 episodes of my own podcasts at this point.
That's so cool.
Just insane.
Yeah, truly wild.
And when did Misaligned start? Have you been podcasting for a full decade?
Misaligned started in 2015, so not quite.
Okay. 600 episodes in less than 10 years. Holy cow.
Yeah, because I did
Yeah.
Misaligned for 100 episodes, roughly. I think it ended at like 103 maybe or something. I did like 30 episodes of a sports podcast, which was short-lived in comparison to everything else. There's been 300 main episodes of this plus some bonus episodes, and Chat Cemetery is at 180 or something, somewhere around there. That one's, approaching 200 at some point here, plus all of the stuff I have put on Patreon as bonus content for Chat Cemetery. So, yeah.
Your shortest lived podcast is about as long as our longest running podcast.
Sports podcasts are hard to do, though, because I was covering like multiple sports, and it's so hard to keep up. Like, it's wild.
I could never.
So, yeah, it's been a journey. This may or may not be back. We'll probably have to bring it back for Alien 3 at some point, but
Surely.
I think this is going to become one of those things where it's semi-retired, and I will put episodes out as I really feel the need to talk about things.
Yeah, I think that's a really great and really healthy model. Like, we've talked about this offline a lot, but when you're making a podcast, it's really important to make it sustainable. And
Yeah.
when you're doing something on a cadence like this, it's kind of cool and it's fulfilling in a way to know that on a weekly basis you're putting something out there. Like, you're always creating. Every episode may not be that great, but at least you're making something every week. Like, you feel that sense of fulfillment as you're doing it. But there's also something to be said about the adverse effects of your health that come with that. All the stress of meeting your self-imposed deadline and arranging guests and like wrangling people. Like, that's the hardest part about a show like this. It's not getting on the phone and talking about something you enjoyed for a half hour to an hour. It's getting other people to do that with you.
Yeah.
To take the time, time out of their normal life. They're not generally podcasters. The folks that you have on the show, like they're friends, right?
Right.
And they take the time to come and do this thing with you, which is fun, but it's also kind of homework, and it's homework for you when you have to edit the show and plan out the next 6 weeks in advance and get a backlog of episodes for when you go on vacation or for the holidays. Like, it's a lot of work. So I totally stand behind the decision to kind of chill out the show for a bit, reevaluate, and just put stuff out when you feel like it.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what I've been doing with Chat Cemetery ever since I caught up earlier this year, because that was even more insane because of the length of King books and the fact that I watched 80 episodes of The Dead Zone because I've completely lost my mind. But, that one was definitely even more time consuming. This one, it's like I was already going to go watch all of the Marvel and Star Wars movies and stuff.
Yeah.
So then it was just sort of a little extra work to take notes, talk about it, edit it. But, as Mike definitely knows, once this also becomes your day job where you're just editing stuff all day, it's very hard to want to also spend a ton of your free time doing that.
Yeah, completely.
And I'm editing like for work 15 to 20 episodes a week right now.
It's so many episodes.
It is
I do
so
one.
many.
I do fractions of one, and it's still too much.
But you're also still doing editing of your old podcast in your free time for fun. So
Yeah, Erin gets really mad at me. She's like, "Why are you working on the weekend?" It's like this is how I relax. I go back to this thing. It's like painting, you know?
Yeah, that's what I've had to tell myself, like with my projects. So with Chat Cemetery, with the YouTube videos, it's like, this isn't the same. And I've definitely been way more lenient with the schedules lately, especially after the move, because moving to a different state is a whole other set of stress. But, you know, like I said, it's been a journey, and I am glad you both have joined me for bits and pieces of it.
Well, we're always here when you need us, and happy to come back anytime when you come back.
for sure.
It'll definitely happen. Thank you both.